Street portraits, that's photos of strangers in public, and you should be taking them regardless if you're a pro or an absolute beginner who's just got their first camera. Why? Well, because it's fun, but it's also one of the best and fastest ways to level up on every area of your photography. But if you take the wrong approach to street portraits, it can be pretty nerve-wracking, awkward, and overall just kind of a horrible experience. Let me explain why street portraits are so important, how to do and not do them, how to get confident in under 5 minutes, and I'll share some strategies with you to turn average portraits into bangers. First of all, of course, what actually is a street portrait? Obviously, they kind of do what they say on the tin. It's a portrait of somebody on the street. But when I say street portraits, you might think of those TikTok videos. You know the ones.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Do you speak English?
Yes.
I'm street photographer.
The thing about those TikToks is that, well, one, they're a little bit of a problem, which we'll get to later, but they can also be quite misleading. The way the photographers act and operate in those videos isn't optimized for a great photo or a great interaction with the stranger. It's optimized for the most views on the internet. You know, it's weird. I feel like a lot of those TikToks kind of fall into this weird new genre of social media art where the TikTok video itself is the art and the value, and the photograph is kind of completely unimportant. It's a bit like, you know those guys who swing buckets of paint around? But of course, that as a definition doesn't quite cover it. When we talk about street portraits, most of the time what we mean is that you've stopped a stranger, asked them for a photo, and then posed them. That means it's not candid, where they didn't know they were having their photo taken, and it's not like a mate of yours or your mum or whatever. If you do take photos of your mates or your mum or weddings or events, how do you send them the pictures? Do you do the Google Drive thing? It's not it. Do you know what it is? Sponsor of today's video, PicTime. PicTime is the best way by a million miles to deliver your photos to clients or your mum. I've been using it since literally before I was even on YouTube, and I can't recommend it enough. You can build really beautiful client delivery galleries that make you look super professional, even though it's super easy, and they're super functional too. Even your mum can figure out how to browse through the photos, download them, share them, and even order prints, which can help you make enough money to finally buy that lens that's been in your Chrome tabs for the last 3 weeks. No, really, when I was paying the bills with event and wedding photography, PicTime was a literal game changer. But it's not just prints. PicTime has a built-in email marketing tool that helps you send reminders to your clients. Maybe it's Valentine's Day in a few weeks and you might like a print from your wedding day, or maybe it's been a while since that big conference and you might need some promo images for the next one. And uploading to the client galleries isn't a hassle either, since PicTime have loads of integrations and plugins you can upload directly from within Lightroom, for example. There's literally no reason not to give it a go, so join PicTime today with the link in the video description to get a 30-day free trial with no credit card required or anything like that. Big thank you to PicTime for sponsoring this video. So now that we know what they are, why should we shoot street portraits in the first place? I mean, I am much more of a candids person, maybe you are too, or maybe you're a completely different flavor of photographer. Maybe you do astro or wildlife or something. Well, there's a couple of very valid reasons. One is that it's one of the best ways to get super familiar with your gear and your process. It massively builds your confidence as a photographer, forces you out of your comfort zone, and as a bonus, the photos are pretty cool too when it's all said and done. I personally love to shoot street portraits as a warm-up before a day of street candids. I mean, if you think about taking street portraits, you probably think about how terrifying it must be to go up and approach a stranger and ask them for a photo. But what you might not think about is how terrifying it is once they say yes, and then you have to go and take a good photo. Maybe you don't have muscle memory for your specific camera and lens combo yet, so you're fumbling around with the controls, or maybe you don't have mental muscle memory for composition yet, so you end up cutting their feet out of the bottom of the photo when you didn't really want to do that. As well as all that, it's good for your ego. One, because it'll very, very quickly identify your weaknesses in a way that's impossible to ignore, but also because you'll end up meeting some really cool people just by stopping them on the street. Instead of doing it like those TikToks, I think it's much more rewarding to let the photo speak for itself. So if you want to take photos like Gordon Parks, Diane Arbus, or Boogie, we'll need to turn on our creative juice machines and figure out the best way to approach our subject, set up for the photo, and make something that both looks good and tells a story. first step, obviously, is to interrupt the day of a stranger and ask them for a photo, which sounds kind of terrifying, because it is at first. Remember how when you were a kid and you would go to the swimming pool, you would be like worried that it was cold, so you wouldn't want to get in, but then once you got in, it was fine. You didn't want to get out again. It's the same thing here. You just have to force yourself to start. And once you've done one or two, I mean, I do mean literally one or two street portraits in a day, you will feel that anxiety just completely lift away, and you'll suddenly be quite calm and able to do it without really thinking about it. See, it's not that you're scared that they're going to turn around and bite you. You're scared that they're going to say no. Guess what happens when they say no? You just say, oh, no problem. Have a good day. And then move on, and nobody gets hurt and nothing bad happens. So how should you ask them for a photo then in the first place? Let's take a look at two examples. Excuse me. Hi, I'm a street photographer. I take pictures of people, and I take pictures, and if I could take your picture, but you have to look really sad, so I can do an Instagram caption where you look really sad. But I take pictures, and
Maybe not. I'm busy, sorry.
but I take pictures. Hi, excuse me. I'm so sorry. I really love your jacket. Would you mind posing for a photo for me? I know it's kind of weird, but I'm getting some
Thank you.
practice in, so
Okay, sure.
yeah? Okay, great. It's kind of a big difference, right? I mean, one of the things that really bugs me about a lot of those TikTok videos is that the photographer approaches talking about themselves and the photos. Most people don't even know what street photography is, and they certainly don't know you. So why would they care? Instead, I think it's a much better approach to just be direct and honest with them and tell them why they specifically caught your eye and why you want them to be in a photo for you. And on that note, be honest with yourself. What are we actually trying to do here? Yeah, we want to take a good photo, but why? It probably shouldn't just be for Instagram clout. I mean, I think the reason I take street portraits, and probably the reason you want to as well, is to tell a story about somebody. And the reason that we've stopped them and asked them to pose for us instead of just shooting a candid and walking past is because our intuition as artists is telling us the story will be better if the subject is also taking part in it. So when it comes to posing them and taking the photo, focus on that. You could have them looking at you or reacting to you, or you could even put your hand in the frame if you're shooting wide enough so that it's like there's this dialogue going on that the viewer of the photo gets to take part in too. You see, a lot of the time what you're really photographing is the connection between that stranger and yourself. I mean, you felt a connection, that's why you stopped them for a photo, so demonstrate that. I don't think you need to try to get a perfect mugshot here. You should make it real and authentic. If they're having a laugh and the camera goes a bit wonky, I think that's much more real and fun to look at than a super dead-on f/0.95 eyes in focus and bokeh ears type photo. I like to shoot street portraits on a 35 or a 50mm lens. If you'd like to know which ones, they're linked in the description along with all of the other gear that I use. And more than just making it authentic, having a more organic and natural feeling photo is a great approach for another reason. One of the big advantages of street portraits is that they're on the street, they're not in a studio. Your subject isn't expecting to have their photo taken, so why cut out their surroundings with really close 85mm framing? I think it's much more fun to go wider and include more context in the frame. Once they've agreed to be in a photo, don't rush to take a picture and tell them they can go because you're worried you're wasting their time. Take 5 seconds to look around and figure out where you can get them to stand where there's a nice background and some nice light. So I want to get kind of like a natural looking portrait where you're just, being yourself. Don't fret, don't worry about how you look because I already think you look cool. So just stand in a relaxed kind of way and maybe let's turn around and we'll go this way so the background's a little more funky. That's really cool. Maybe stick your hands in your pockets. Do you have pockets? Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Look at that, you're a natural. When it comes to posing people, there's a really popular trend right now, especially with film photographers, to make people sort of stand very neutral with no expression on their face, a bit American Gothic-like. And I dig the look, but it's pretty difficult to make a stranger pose like that without them looking a bit tense or uncomfortable. And so I usually prefer to just get people to act like themselves. I mean, I stopped them specifically because they caught my eye or something about them caught my eye. So whatever I can do to exaggerate that makes sense, right? If they have a great outfit, I'll try to get that involved. Or if they have really cool energy, I'll try to bring that out of them while talking and shooting at the same time. And look, the first few times you do this, you're going to be nervous as hell and you will say silly things and take bad photos with wonky horizons, and that's okay. It's a skill that takes practice. The thing is, the skills that street portraits teach you are so useful everywhere. Like if you travel or you take photos of your friends or at events, you're going to need to do these things all the time. But even better is that once you make this something you do on a regular basis, you'll start to get better and better. And then you'll not only take better photos, but you'll get more confident with your gear and your skills. You'll get better at talking to strangers and you'll end up meeting some really cool people. I always make sure I exchange contact information if I can with people that I take street portraits of, even if it's just giving them my Instagram. And I've made some really great friends this way, believe it or not. So this week, give it a go. I challenge you, go and take 5 street portraits, and you never know, you might just learn something. Remember when I said TikTok street photographers were causing some issues? Watch this and I'll explain. Stay hydrated and create art.